Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome back, everyone. In this deep dive, we'll be exploring the answer to Quizzypedia, Season 207, Question 1.
All right, so the category is philosophy. And the question is, what is the name of the ancient Chinese philosophical concept that describes how seemingly opposite forces are interconnected and interdependent in the natural world, representing dualities like light and dark, male and female, and order and chaos? This concept underpins much of Chinese thought and is often symbolized by a black and white circle divided by a flowing line.
And the answer, of course, is Yin Yang, an ancient concept, but one that's remained relevant, not just within Chinese culture, but in our understanding of the world.
Definitely. Yin Yang is a lot more than just a symbol. It's a really foundational concept in Chinese philosophy. It represents those dual forces that govern the universe, this kind of a dance between seemingly opposite forces that are actually interconnected and interdependent.
So not about conflict then, but more about balance and harmony between those opposites.
Exactly. Yin Yang emphasizes that everything's connected. And in a state of constant flux, nothing stays the same. Everything's changing and evolving. It all relates to its opposite. Think of it like breathing, the inhale and exhale. Those are opposites, but they work together to create that continuous cycle that you need to live.
That makes sense, yeah. It's dynamic, not static. Could we maybe dive a little deeper into the symbol itself, the Taijitu, that black and white circle with the flowing line? What does it all mean?
Yeah, the Taijitu is a really great visual representation of the essence of yin yang. So the black section, yin, embodies things like darkness, femininity, passivity, and receptivity. Yang, the white section, is light, masculinity, activity, assertiveness. See that flowing line between them that shows that yin and yang aren't static. It's a continuous dance. Transformation, shifting, evolving, all in response to each other.
Right. Hey, well, there's that interesting detail, the smaller circle, the opposite color nestled inside each half. What's that about?
Oh, that's crucial. It means that yin and yang aren't completely separate. Each one has the seed of the other within it, showing that connection between those seemingly opposite forces. Think about it. Even in the darkest night, there's always a promise of dawn, Within every challenge, there's an opportunity.
So how far back can we trace this idea of yin-yang? Historically, I mean.
Well, the origins are in ancient Chinese thought, specifically during the Warring States period. That's 475 to 121 BCE. You find early references to it in texts like the I Ching, the Book of Changes. It's a really foundational text in Chinese philosophy.
And the I Ching was already looking at this interplay between opposing forces.
Yeah, it lays the groundwork. It provides a framework to understand how change is cyclical and how those seemingly opposite forces are actually connected. Then later, Taoist philosophers like Laozi and Zhuangzi, they really expanded on the concept of yin-yang.
How did Taoism shape how people understand yin-yang?
Taoist philosophers put the harmony of yin-yang at the very center of understanding the natural order, like it was the key to achieving balance, to living in accordance with the Tao, the way, the path, the natural order of the universe, basically.
So yin-yang isn't just this abstract philosophical concept. It's woven into Chinese culture, right?
Absolutely. Its influence is everywhere, from art and literature to religion, ethics, even their worldview. The traditional Chinese worldview values balance and harmony above all else. And that principle comes directly from yin-yang.
Could you give some specific examples of how yin-yang shows up in Chinese culture?
Sure. Confucianism, for instance. It emphasizes maintaining balance and order in social relationships, mirroring the balance you see in nature, as described by yin-yang. This is reflected in the 5 key relationships in Confucianism: ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, elder sibling and younger sibling, and friend and friend. Each of those relationships has a specific set of roles and responsibilities that all contribute to the harmony of society.
Like a microcosm of that broader universal balance.
Yeah.
Represented by yin-yang.
Precisely. And this focus on balance and harmony shows up in other aspects of Chinese culture, too. Traditional Chinese art, for example, you see elements of yin and yang being incorporated into paintings, calligraphy, architecture.
And going beyond philosophy and culture, how did yin-yang influence other fields, like medicine, for instance?
Well, traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, is deeply rooted in the concept of yin-yang. Practitioners believe that to have good health, you have to maintain balance between these forces in the body. Illness is seen as a disruption of this balance.
So treatments in TCM aim to restore this harmony.
Exactly. Things like acupuncture and herbal remedies, even dietary adjustments, it's all designed to restore the balance between yin and yang within the body, to promote healing, well-being.
Fascinating. And did yin yang influence scientific thought too in ancient China?
Yeah, definitely. So in things like astronomy and cosmology, yin and yang were used to explain natural cycles, celestial movements, that kind of thing. The idea of cyclical change that's inherent in yin yang was how they understood the movements of the sun and the moon and the stars, and the changing seasons.
Interesting. So yin yang had a big impact on Chinese thought and practice, so from philosophy and culture to medicine and science. But what about outside China? Has it had any impact on the modern world?
Absolutely. Today, the concept of yin yang is still influencing things, not just Chinese culture, but global perspectives too, on balance and well-being. And the symbol has been really widely adopted in the
You
West.
see it everywhere.
Exactly. It often represents balance, mindfulness, that interconnectedness of opposites. You see its influence in areas like holistic health practices,
Hmm.
where balancing energies in the body is central, to even modern philosophical discussions about duality and interconnectedness.
It seems this ancient Chinese concept is still relevant today. It's not just a passive concept, though, right? It suggests that to achieve harmony, we need to embrace this interplay of opposites within ourselves and our relationships and our understanding of the world.
You're absolutely right. Yin Yang encourages us to move away from thinking in a binary way, either, and instead embrace the complexities of life, the nuances. It reminds us that every situation, every phenomenon has elements of both yin and yang.
So it's about seeing the connection rather than focusing on the separation.
Exactly. And then you try to achieve balance. But that doesn't mean you're looking for some kind of static equilibrium. Because remember, yin and yang are always changing. It's about finding a dynamic balance where both forces can exist and interact harmoniously.
So if I'm feeling stressed, overwhelmed by activity, the answer isn't to just shut down and become passive. It's about finding ways to incorporate those moments of calm, receptivity into my day.
Yeah, that's a great example. Or let's say you're feeling stuck, unmotivated. That might be a sign that you need more yang energy in your life. Maybe through physical activity or creative expression, taking initiative on a project.
So it's about recognizing the imbalance
Yeah.
and then consciously making choices to restore harmony.
Yeah, exactly. And you can apply this awareness and this effort to maintain balance to your relationships too. You have to recognize the different energies each person brings, understand that differences don't have to lead to conflict. They can actually complement each other, enrich the relationship, if you approach it with this understanding of yin yang.
So appreciate the differences and find ways to make them work together, rather than seeing them as points of friction.
Exactly. Yin Yang gives us a framework to understand and navigate the complexities of life, from our internal experiences to how we interact with others and the world around us.
Ultimately, it's not just about knowing about yin-yang. It's about applying it to live a more balanced, harmonious life.
Precisely. It's about seeing the world differently, recognizing that everything's interconnected, and trying to find balance in all aspects of your life.
It's a powerful concept. And what I find really interesting is that yin-yang, while it's rooted in ancient Chinese philosophy, it kind of resonates with ideas and observations from other cultures too, other fields of study.
You're right. The idea of duality, of interconnected opposites, it shows up in different ways throughout history and across cultures. Think of the ancient Greek concepts of logos and eros, or the Hindu concepts of Purusha and Prakriti. They're all pointing to this recognition of the interplay of opposing forces in shaping reality.
It speaks to something universal, doesn't it? This awareness of the push and pull of opposing forces within us and in the world around us. And even modern science, in some ways, is echoing these ancient insights.
For sure. Think about wave-particle duality in quantum mechanics, for example. The idea that light can be both a wave and a particle. It seems contradictory, but they're both true. That has a real yin-yang quality to it. Or in biology, the symbiotic relationships between species, where organisms with seemingly opposing needs depend on each other to survive.
Reminds us that reality is more complex than we think, than our simple categories and labels would suggest.
Exactly. And maybe that's one of the most valuable things we get from exploring yin-yang. It invites us to embrace complexity, move past that simple binary thinking, and see the world and ourselves as this dynamic interplay of interconnected forces.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into yin-yang, is there one key thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I'd say think about how understanding yin-yang, this interdependence of opposites, can help us appreciate balance better in nature, in our relationships, within ourselves. It's not about getting rid of differences, but seeing how they're connected and trying to achieve a harmonious coexistence.
A valuable lesson. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of yin yang.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. And this whole idea of balance, it's really important for personal well-being too. Think of like a seesaw, right? You put too much weight on one side, it's unbalanced. Same with our lives. If it's all work and no rest, or constant activity without any stillness, it creates imbalance. Yin Yang reminds us to find that middle ground.
So it's not about getting rid of one side, but more about finding that harmony in the middle.
Exactly. It's about understanding that each side has a purpose. Like darkness helps us appreciate light, right? Periods of rest help us come back to activity with more energy. Yin Yang encourages us to embrace both sides, recognize the value in each.
How can we use this understanding of yin yang when we're making decisions?
Ooh, that's a good question. When you're facing a decision, think about the yin and yang aspects of each option. Let's say you're thinking about a new job. The yang side might be things like career growth, higher salary, exciting challenges. The yin side could be longer hours, more responsibility, maybe having to move.
So using that yin-yang lens helps you make a more balanced decision.
Exactly. It helps you move beyond just logic or emotion and consider like the bigger picture. You tap into a deeper wisdom. You see the good and the bad and try to make a decision that fits with your overall well-being.
It's like yin-yang is a compass to help navigate life's complexities.
That's a great way to put it. It reminds us that life is this constant dance between these two forces. And by understanding this principle, we can face challenges with more awareness, make better choices, and ultimately live a more fulfilling, balanced life.
This has been a great deep dive into yin yang. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. I think our listeners will have a much better grasp on this concept now and how relevant it still is today.
It's been a pleasure.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.